Marcus Carter sat in his small studio apartment, staring at the blank canvas in front of him. His hands trembled slightly as he held his brush, a mixture of frustration and determination burning in his chest. For years, he had poured his heart and soul into his art. Yet, time and time again, the doors of opportunity slammed shut in his face. His studio walls were lined with paintings, vibrant landscapes, haunting portraits, and abstract pieces that spoke of pain, joy, and resilience. But they remained unsold, collecting dust in the dimly lit space. It wasn't as if Marcus lacked talent. Anyone who looked at his work could see the raw emotion and technical skill. The problem was, in the elite world of art galleries and collectors, Marcus didn't fit their mold. He was a self-taught black artist who hadn't attended prestigious art schools or rubbed elbows with the right crowd. To them, he was an outsider. And in a world that thrived on connections and reputations, being an outsider was a near impossible barrier to overcome. The day had started like any other. Marcus packed several of his best pieces into a borrowed van, careful not to damage the fragile frames. An open exhibition was being held at the Lexington Art Gallery, one of the most prestigious in the city. Though he wasn't officially invited, Marcus had heard the gallery allowed local artists to showcase their work during a portion of the event. It was his chance to stand alongside established names, to let his work speak for itself. As Marcus arrived at the gallery, he couldn't help but marvel at the grandeur of the place. Tall glass windows reflected the morning sun, and the building's sleek, modern design exuded wealth and exclusivity. Inside, the atmosphere was equally imposing. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow on the pristine white walls adorned with paintings from renowned artists. Wealthy patrons milled about, sipping champagne and discussing art in hushed tones. Marcus set up his section in a corner, away from the main displays. He arranged his paintings meticulously, each piece telling a story of struggle, hope, and resilience. His heart pounded as he took a step back to admire his work. He knew these paintings had the potential to captivate, but the question lingered, would anyone give them a chance? Hours passed, and while a few attendees glanced at his work, most walked past without a second look. Some barely hid their disdain, their eyes flickering over him before moving on. Marcus felt the sting of rejection with every indifferent gaze, but he refused to let it break him. This was his dream, and dreams didn't come easy. It wasn't long before Marcus noticed a group of well-dressed men and women making their way through the gallery. At the center was Mr. Thornton, the gallery's owner, a tall man with a commanding presence. His tailored suit and sharp features exuded confidence, and the way others deferred to him made it clear he was a man of influence. Thornton and his entourage approached Marcus's corner, their conversation pausing as they took in his display. For a brief moment, hope surged within Marcus. He stepped forward, ready to introduce himself and his work. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus began, his voice steady, despite his nerves. "I'm Marcus Carter. These are some of my pieces. I'd love to hear your thoughts." Thornton's sharp eyes scanned the paintings, his expression unreadable. The group around him exchanged glances, some smirking subtly. After what felt like an eternity, Thornton finally spoke. "These are interesting," he said, his tone laced with condescension. "But they lack refinement. Amateurish, I'd say." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, but Thornton wasn't finished. "Art isn't just about throwing paint on a canvas," Thornton continued, his voice loud enough for others nearby to hear. "It's about understanding composition, technique, and the market. Talent alone isn't enough. You need pedigree, connections, something more." The group chuckled softly, and Marcus felt his face flush with humiliation. He wanted to defend his work, to explain the countless hours he had spent perfecting his craft, but Thornton had already turned away, moving on to the next display. The dismissal was final, leaving Marcus standing alone, his pride in shreds. That night, back in his studio, Marcus replayed the encounter in his mind. The humiliation, the laughter, the dismissive tone, it all fueled a fire within him. Thornton's words had stung, but they also ignited a fierce determination. Marcus wasn't going to let one man's opinion define his worth. He spent the next several months pouring himself into his art with renewed vigor. Every stroke of the brush was a declaration, every color a statement of his resilience. He experimented with new techniques, blending abstract and realism in a way that felt uniquely his own. But Marcus knew talent alone wouldn't be enough. Thornton was right about one thing: the art world valued connections and exposure. If the galleries wouldn't accept him, he would find another way to reach the audience he knew his work deserved. Marcus turned to social media, creating an account dedicated to his art. He started posting regularly, sharing not just finished pieces, but also the stories behind them. He talked about his struggles, his inspirations, and the emotions that fueled his work. At first, the response was slow. But gradually, people began to notice. Comments poured in, praising his talent and the raw honesty in his words. His following grew, and soon, art enthusiasts and collectors from around the world were reaching out to him. One day, a message arrived that would change everything. A prominent online art curator had come across Marcus's work and wanted to feature him in a virtual exhibition. It was the break Marcus had been waiting for. The exhibition was a resounding success, with several of his pieces selling for thousands of dollars. For the first time, Marcus felt the weight of validation, not just from others, but from himself. As his reputation grew, so did his opportunities. Major publications featured his story, highlighting the unique perspective his art brought to the table. Collectors who once wouldn't have given him a second glance were now vying for his work. And through it all, Marcus remained grounded, never forgetting the struggles that had shaped him. But Marcus wasn't done. His rise wasn't just about proving his worth, it was about breaking barriers and challenging the prejudices that had held him back. He was determined to create a space where artists like him, talented, passionate, and often overlooked, could thrive. Unbeknownst to Thornton, Marcus's journey was far from over, and their paths were destined to cross again. This time, however, the power dynamic would be very different. Marcus was no longer just a struggling artist, he was a force to be reckoned with. And when he finally stepped into Thornton's gallery again, it wouldn't be as an aspiring artist seeking approval. It would be as a buyer ready to claim his place at the top. Marcus Carter woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. He groggily reached for it, squinting at the blinding brightness of the screen. Notifications flooded his social media accounts, likes, comments, and follows pouring in by the second. Confused and still half asleep, he opened his account to investigate. His latest painting, a vibrant and deeply emotional piece titled Rising Shadows, had gone viral overnight. At first, Marcus couldn't believe it. He scrolled through the notifications, trying to piece together what had happened. Then he saw it, a tweet from a global celebrity, an actor with millions of followers, who had shared an image of his painting with the caption, "This is what resilience looks like." Absolutely stunning work by Marcus Carter Art. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The actor, Naomi St. Clair, was known not only for her blockbuster movies, but also for her outspoken support of underrepresented artists. Her single post had catapulted his painting into the spotlight. Comments flooded in from people around the world, praising the piece and asking where they could buy his work. For a moment, Marcus sat frozen, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Then, with a deep breath, he sprang into action. He updated his website to include more of his work and set up an online shop for prints and smaller original pieces. The orders came pouring in almost immediately. It was chaotic, exhilarating, and a little terrifying all at once. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Marcus's inbox was inundated with messages from potential buyers, art enthusiasts, and even journalists who wanted to feature his story. Private collectors began reaching out, offering substantial sums for his original pieces. One collector, a wealthy entrepreneur named James Alcott, expressed particular interest. James had a reputation for discovering rising stars in the art world, and his endorsement often led to career-defining opportunities. During their phone conversation, James said, "Marcus, your work is extraordinary. It's raw, honest, and deeply moving. I'd like to host a solo exhibition for you. A proper one, in a high-profile venue. Let's show the world what you're capable of. Marcus was stunned. A solo exhibition in a prestigious venue was a dream he had barely dared to entertain. After a moment of silence, he managed to stammer, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. Don't thank me yet, James replied with a chuckle. We've got a lot of work to do. But I believe in your talent, Marcus. Let's make this happen. The months leading up to the exhibition were a blur of activity. Marcus poured his energy into creating new pieces, each one more ambitious than the last. He wanted this collection to reflect not only his journey, but also the stories of resilience and strength that had inspired him along the way. Meanwhile, James and his team handled the logistics, securing a prime location in the heart of the city. The venue was a sprawling gallery known for hosting exhibitions by some of the biggest names in the art world. To Marcus, it felt surreal, a far cry from the small corners and community events where he had struggled to be noticed. Despite his growing success, Marcus couldn't shake the nerves that crept in as the exhibition approached. The art world could be unforgiving, and he knew there would be critics scrutinizing every detail of his work. To ease his anxiety, he decided to attend the event in disguise. He wanted to observe the reactions of attendees without the pressure of being in the spotlight. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery was abuzz with activity. Guests streamed in, dressed in elegant attire, their conversations a mix of admiration and critique. Marcus stood in a corner, unrecognizable in a simple suit and a pair of glasses. He had intentionally kept his appearance understated, blending in with the crowd. As he moved through the gallery, Marcus listened intently to the discussions around his paintings. Some spoke in hushed tones, marveling at the vivid colors and intricate details. Others shared their interpretations of the pieces, finding personal connections in the stories they told. One couple stood in front of rising shadows, their voices filled with emotion as they discussed how it reminded them of their own struggles and triumphs. This is incredible, the woman said, her voice tinged with awe. It's like he painted what I've always felt but could never put into words. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. Moments like these reminded him why he had chosen this path, despite all the challenges. His art wasn't just about creating beautiful images, it was about connecting with people, telling stories that resonated on a deeper level. As the night progressed, Marcus noticed a group of art critics gathered near one of his larger pieces, Breaking Chains. The painting depicted a powerful scene of a figure shattering iron restraints, their expression a mix of pain and triumph. It was one of Marcus's most personal works, inspired by his journey of overcoming rejection and self-doubt. One critic, a middle-aged man with a sharp suit and an even sharper tongue, gestured toward the painting. This, he said, is what contemporary art needs more of. Authenticity. It's not just about technique, it's about emotion, and this artist has captured both brilliantly. Another critic nodded in agreement. I couldn't agree more. There's an honesty here that's rare. Whoever this Marcus Carter is, he's a force to be reckoned with. Marcus's heart swelled with pride. To hear such praise from critics who had likely dismissed him in the past felt like a victory, not just for him, but for every artist who had ever been overlooked. The night ended with a resounding success. Nearly every piece in the exhibition had sold, some for prices that Marcus could barely comprehend. The event cemented his status as one of the most exciting new voices in the art world. Yet, as he left the gallery that night, his thoughts weren't on the sales or the accolades. Instead, he thought about the people who had connected with his work, who had seen their own stories reflected in his paintings. Marcus knew this was only the beginning. There were still barriers to break, still voices to amplify. And though he had come far, he hadn't forgotten the sting of Thornton's dismissal or the prejudice he had faced along the way. As he stepped out into the cool night air, Marcus made a silent promise: he would continue to rise, not just for himself, but for every artist who had ever been told they weren't enough. The Lexington Art Gallery was hosting yet another high-profile event, one that promised to showcase the most talked-about collection of the year, The buzz surrounding Marcus Carter's exhibition had reached even the most jaded circles of the art world, including the ears of Mr. Thornton. Known for his influence and sharp tongue, Thornton had little patience for trendy artists, but the growing hype around this mysterious talent piqued his curiosity. Thornton had spent decades building his reputation as a tastemaker. If this Marcus Carter was truly as talented as people claimed, Thornton wanted to be the first to own his work. After all, he prided himself on his ability to spot valuable art before anyone else. Without realizing the irony, Thornton decided to attend the exhibition, oblivious to the fact that his path was about to cross with the very man he had once humiliated. The gallery was alive with chatter, the air electric with anticipation. Thornton arrived fashionably late, his usual entourage in tow. He scanned the room, his sharp eyes noting the impressive crowd. Wealthy collectors, art critics, and even a few celebrities were in attendance, their expressions ranging from admiration to awe as they viewed the pieces on display. Thornton approached the first painting in the collection, a striking piece titled Rising Shadows. The deep, swirling colors seemed to pull him in, and for a moment, he forgot where he was. The painting exuded a raw energy that he couldn't quite put into words. Thornton leaned in closer, studying the details, the bold brushstrokes, the intricate layers of texture, and the emotion radiating from the canvas. "Magnificent," he murmured, his voice uncharacteristically soft. One of his companions, a young gallery assistant eager to impress, chimed in. "Mr. Thornton, this entire collection has been the talk of the art world. Marcus Carter is said to be redefining contemporary art." "Redefining?" Thornton said with a raised brow, his skepticism briefly resurfacing. But as he moved to the next piece, Breaking Chains, his doubts began to waver. The painting was powerful, almost overwhelming in its intensity. The central figure, breaking free from iron restraints, seemed to leap off the canvas. Thornton found himself captivated, unable to tear his eyes away. The symbolism was clear, yet it carried a depth that invited endless interpretation. For a man who had spent his career critiquing art, Thornton found himself uncharacteristically at a loss for words. This is extraordinary," he said, turning to his assistant. "Who is this Marcus Carter? Why haven't I heard of him before?" The assistant hesitated, sensing Thornton's growing interest. "He's relatively new to the mainstream, but his rise has been meteoric. His work resonates with people on a deeply emotional level. Critics are calling him the voice of a new generation." Thornton nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. Let's see more." As Thornton moved through the gallery, his admiration for the collection grew. Each piece seemed to tell a story, weaving together themes of struggle, hope, and triumph. The crowd around him buzzed with excitement, their conversations a chorus of praise for the artist. Thornton began to feel a sense of urgency. He needed to acquire one of these pieces before the rest of the art world caught on. Finally, he arrived at the centerpiece of the collection, a massive painting titled The Phoenix Within. It depicted a fiery bird rising from ashes, its wings spread wide in a defiant display of strength. Thornton stared at it, completely entranced. The painting felt alive, as if it were speaking directly to him. "I must have this," Thornton declared, turning to his assistant. "Find out how much it costs and make an offer." The assistant hurried away, eager to please. Meanwhile, Thornton lingered by the painting, soaking in its energy. Around him, other attendees murmured their admiration, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. When the assistant returned, his expression was a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Mr. Thornton," he began cautiously, "I've spoken with the curator. The asking price for the Phoenix Within is $1.2 million. Thornton's eyes widened, and for a moment, he thought he had misheard. $1.2 million, he repeated, his voice rising in disbelief. "For one painting?" "Yes, sir," the assistant replied. "And several other pieces have already sold for similar amounts. Marcus Carter's work is in extremely high demand." Thornton's mind raced. He had bought expensive art before, but this was different. This wasn't a well-established name or a classic masterpiece. This was Marcus Carter, a newcomer whose work had only recently gained attention. Still, Thornton couldn't deny the undeniable pull he felt toward the painting. It was worth the price, if only for the potential investment. "Fine," Thornton said with a wave of his hand. "Make the purchase. Tell them I'll take the Phoenix Within and 2 other pieces." The assistant nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Thornton allowed himself a small smile, confident that he had made a shrewd decision. As Thornton waited, a man approached him, a tall figure in a tailored suit, his presence commanding yet approachable. It was Marcus Carter himself, though Thornton didn't recognize him. "Good evening," Marcus said, extending a hand. "I couldn't help but notice your interest in the collection. Are you enjoying the exhibition?" Thornton shook his hand, assuming he was speaking to a gallery representative. "Indeed, I am. These pieces are remarkable. I'm particularly taken with the Phoenix Within. The artist has a gift." Marcus's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." Thornton tilted his head, intrigued. "You speak as if you know the artist." "I do," Marcus replied, his tone calm but loaded with meaning. "Quite well, in fact." Before Thornton could respond, the assistant returned, his face pale and his eyes wide. He leaned in close to Thornton, whispering something in his ear. Thornton's expression shifted from confidence to confusion, and then to shock. "What do you mean the artist refuses to sell to me?" Thornton demanded, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby guests. The assistant hesitated, glancing nervously at Marcus. "Sir, Marcus Carter, he's here. He said he'd like to speak with you directly." Thornton turned to Marcus, his face a mixture of disbelief and indignation. "You're Marcus Carter?" Marcus met Thornton's gaze evenly, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Thornton's rising anger. "Yes, I am. And if I'm not mistaken, we've met before." Thornton's mind raced as the realization hit him. He remembered the young artist he had dismissed months ago, the one whose work he had called amateurish. The humiliation burned in his chest as he realized the tables had turned. Thornton began, struggling to find his words. "I didn't realize." Marcus held up a hand, cutting him off. "You didn't realize I was the same person you dismissed without a second thought. I remember your words quite clearly, Mr. Thornton. Amateurish, I believe, was the term you used." Thornton's face flushed with embarrassment, and for once, he was at a loss for words. Marcus continued, his voice steady but firm. "I'm glad you've come to appreciate my work, but I think it's best we leave it at that. My art isn't for sale to someone who didn't see its value when it mattered most." With that, Marcus turned and walked away, leaving Thornton standing in stunned silence. Around them, whispers spread through the crowd as attendees pieced together what had happened. Thornton had come to the exhibition seeking to claim a piece of Marcus's brilliance, but instead, he had been forced to confront his own prejudice and arrogance. As Marcus disappeared into the crowd, Thornton was left with nothing but regret, and the knowledge that he had underestimated a rising star who would go on to redefine the art world. Marcus Carter sat in his newly renovated gallery, a sprawling space bathed in natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The hardwood floors gleamed, reflecting the curated pieces that adorned the walls, paintings, sculptures, and installations by artists who, like Marcus once had, struggled to find a platform. The sign outside read Resilience Gallery, a name Marcus had chosen to honor the journey that brought him here and to inspire others who dared to dream despite the odds. It was a surreal moment for Marcus. Just 2 years ago, he had been scraping by, lugging his paintings to community exhibitions, praying someone would see the value in his work. Now, he wasn't just an artist, he was a patron, a gatekeeper, and a voice for the marginalized. The gallery wasn't just a business, it was a movement. Marcus's journey to becoming a gallery owner had been as challenging as it was rewarding. After the resounding success of his exhibition, he found himself inundated with opportunities. Collectors, investors, and institutions all clamored for his attention, eager to capitalize on his meteoric rise. But Marcus had a vision, one that extended beyond personal success. With the substantial earnings from his art sales and the backing of a few trusted patrons, Marcus had set out to create a space where underrepresented artists could thrive. He had seen firsthand how prejudice and elitism plagued the art world, shutting out voices that didn't conform to its narrow standards. His gallery would be different. It would be a sanctuary for artists whose work was bold, raw, and unapologetically authentic. The opening night of Resilience Gallery was a grand affair. The guest list included critics, collectors, and artists from all walks of life. The walls were adorned with pieces that told stories of identity, struggle, and triumph. Each artist featured in the inaugural exhibition had faced rejection and discrimination, yet their talent shone brightly. Marcus gave a speech that evening, standing in front of a piece titled The Cycle, one of his own works. The painting depicted a wheel made of intertwined hands, symbolizing unity and the interconnectedness of human experiences. I created this gallery, Marcus began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, because I know what it's like to have your work dismissed, your voice silenced, your story ignored. This space isn't just about art, it's about resilience, about breaking down barriers and lifting each other up. To every artist out there who has ever been told no, this is for you. The crowd erupted into applause, and Marcus felt a swell of pride. He had turned his pain into purpose, and the world had taken notice. While Marcus's star continued to rise, Mr. Thornton's fortunes took a very different turn. The story of his earlier treatment of Marcus had gone viral after the exhibition. Journalists and art enthusiasts latched onto the narrative of Thornton's arrogance and the poetic justice of Marcus's success. Social media was flooded with memes and commentary, casting Thornton as the villain in Marcus's tale of triumph. As the public turned against him, Thornton's gallery began to suffer. Attendance at his events dwindled, and several prominent collectors withdrew their support. His reputation as a tastemaker was tarnished, replaced by the image of a man out of touch with the evolving art world. Thornton tried to salvage his reputation, issuing public statements and even attempting to align himself with emerging artists. But the damage was done. The art world had moved on, and Thornton found himself increasingly isolated. One afternoon, as Marcus sat in his office reviewing portfolios from prospective artists, his assistant knocked on the door. "Marcus," she said hesitantly, "there's someone here to see you." "It's Mr. Thornton." Marcus looked up, surprised. "Thornton? What does he want?" "He didn't say," the assistant replied. "But he looks different. Almost humble." Marcus nodded. "Send him in." A moment later, Thornton stepped into the office. He looked older than Marcus remembered, the sharpness in his eyes dulled by what seemed like exhaustion. He was dressed impeccably, as always, but there was a stiffness to his movements, a hesitancy that Marcus had never seen before. "Mr. Carter," Thornton began, his voice subdued. "Thank you for seeing me." Marcus gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Have a seat." Thornton sat down, his hands resting awkwardly on his lap. For a moment, there was silence as Marcus waited for him to speak. "I came here," Thornton said finally, "because I wanted to apologize. I was wrong to dismiss you the way I did. I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I failed to see the brilliance of your work. You've accomplished something extraordinary, and I admire you for it." Marcus studied Thornton's face, searching for any trace of insincerity. But the man seemed genuine, his usual bravado replaced by humility. "Thank you," Marcus said, his tone measured. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. But I have to ask, why now? Why come to me after all this time?" Thornton hesitated, then sighed. "Because I've lost everything. My gallery is failing. My reputation is in ruins. And I realize now that the art world is changing in ways I didn't anticipate. People want authenticity, diversity, and stories that matter. You've built something remarkable here, something that reflects those values. I want to be a part of it." Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering Thornton's words. He thought about the younger version of himself who had stood in Thornton's gallery, desperate for a chance. The humiliation he had felt then still lingered, but it no longer defined him. "I appreciate your honesty," Marcus said after a moment. "And I believe in second chances. But if we're going to work together, it will be on my terms. This gallery isn't just about selling art, it's about creating a platform for voices that have been ignored. If you're willing to support that mission, then we can talk." Thornton nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I am. I want to help in any way I can." Marcus extended his hand. "Then let's make something meaningful together." Thornton shook his hand, and for the first time, Marcus saw a man who was willing to learn, to grow, and to leave behind the arrogance that had once defined him. The partnership between Marcus and Thornton became an unlikely success story. Thornton used his connections and experience to help elevate the gallery's profile, while Marcus ensured that the mission of supporting marginalized artists remained at its core. Together, they built something that transcended their individual ambitions, a gallery that not only showcased incredible art but also proved that change was possible, even in the most exclusive circles. Through it all, Marcus never lost sight of why he had started this journey. He continued to paint, to tell stories through his art, and to inspire others to chase their dreams, no matter how many doors were slammed in their faces. Because resilience, as Marcus had learned, was the true masterpiece. The Grand Hall of Resilience Gallery was filled with an electric energy. Artists, patrons, critics, and admirers had gathered for the most ambitious event the gallery had ever hosted, the Voices Unheard exhibition. The event wasn't just a showcase of extraordinary art, it was a declaration of a new era in the art world, one where diversity, authenticity, and inclusivity were at the forefront. Marcus Carter stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. The event marked the culmination of years of hard work, growth, and an unwavering commitment to change. His tailored suit and calm demeanor spoke of a man who had not only overcome adversity but thrived in its face. Yet beneath the polished exterior, Marcus was still the same passionate artist who had started with nothing but a dream and a paintbrush. The exhibition was the largest Marcus had ever curated. It featured works from artists across the globe, each with a unique story to tell. From vibrant murals celebrating cultural heritage to abstract pieces exploring identity and belonging, the collection was a testament to the resilience and creativity of underrepresented voices. Marcus had personally selected every artist, ensuring the event remained true to his vision. As the evening progressed, Marcus took a moment to step back and observe. The gallery was alive with conversation and laughter. Guests admired the art, shared their interpretations, and connected with the stories behind each piece. It was everything Marcus had dreamed of and more. Nearby, Mr. Thornton mingled with a group of artists, his demeanor markedly different from the man Marcus had first encountered years ago. Thornton's fall from grace had been humbling, but it had also been transformative. Over time, he had come to see the art world through a new lens, one that valued authenticity over elitism. Thornton had become one of the gallery's most vocal advocates, using his platform to promote diversity and inclusion. He spoke openly about his mistakes, hoping his story would serve as a cautionary tale for others. His influence, combined with Marcus's vision, had helped propel Resilience Gallery to the forefront of the global art scene. Later that evening, Marcus took the stage to address the crowd. The room fell silent as the spotlight illuminated him, the weight of the moment palpable. "Good evening, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady but warm. "Thank you for being here tonight. This event is more than an exhibition, it's a celebration of resilience, of stories that deserve to be told, and of the incredible power of art to bring us together." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "When I started this journey, I faced rejection after rejection. I was told my work wasn't refined enough or that I didn't belong in certain spaces. But I wasn't alone. There are countless artists out there with incredible talent who've been dismissed, overlooked, or silenced simply because they didn't fit the mold. This gallery exists to change that." The audience erupted into applause, and Marcus felt a surge of pride. He gestured toward the art surrounding them. "The pieces you see here tonight are more than just paintings or sculptures. They're stories of courage, identity, and hope. They remind us that art isn't about fitting into a box, it's about breaking free of it. Marcus's eyes scanned the crowd, landing on Thornton, who gave him an encouraging nod. I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who has been a part of this journey. Mr. Thornton, thank you for showing us that it's never too late to change. Your support has been invaluable, and your willingness to grow has set an example for others in the industry. The crowd turned to Thornton, who looked both humbled and proud. He offered a small wave, and the applause grew louder. Marcus continued, his voice filled with emotion. This gallery is just the beginning. My hope is that it inspires others to create spaces like this, to lift each other up and make the art world, and the world at large, a more inclusive place. Because when we give everyone a seat at the table, we all benefit. The speech was met with a standing ovation, and Marcus stepped down from the stage, his heart full. As the evening continued, he made his way through the crowd, speaking with artists, collectors, and guests. He listened to their stories, shared his own, and celebrated the connections that had been forged through the gallery. In the weeks following the exhibition, Resilience Gallery received international acclaim. Major publications highlighted its role in reshaping the art world, and the artists featured in the exhibition saw a surge in demand for their work. But for Marcus, the true success lay in the stories of the artists themselves. One young painter, a woman from a small town in Ghana, told Marcus that her life had changed overnight. Her piece, a vibrant depiction of her community's traditions, had not only sold for a life-changing sum but had also opened doors to opportunities she had never imagined. Another artist, a sculptor who had spent years battling self-doubt, shared how the exhibition had given him the confidence to pursue his craft full-time. Marcus's inbox overflowed with messages from aspiring artists, each one eager to be a part of the gallery's mission. He read every message, inspired by their passion and determination. He knew that his work was far from done. 1 year after the exhibition, Marcus announced a new initiative, the Resilience Fund, a program dedicated to supporting marginalized artists through grants, mentorship, and exhibition opportunities. The fund quickly gained traction, with major donors and organizations rallying behind the cause. Thornton played a key role in securing support, using his connections to amplify the fund's reach. Thornton's transformation continued to be a source of inspiration. He became a sought-after speaker at industry events, where he candidly shared his journey from exclusion to advocacy. His efforts, combined with Marcus's vision, sparked a broader conversation about diversity in the arts. The story came full circle on a crisp autumn evening as Marcus stood on the steps of Resilience Gallery, looking out at a bustling crowd gathered for the inauguration of the gallery's annual event. This time, it wasn't just about showcasing art, it was about celebrating a movement that had grown far beyond Marcus's original vision. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had turned his pain into purpose, his struggles into strength. And in doing so, he had not only changed his own life, but also the lives of countless others. The evening ended with a toast. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and Marcus raised his glass high. To resilience, he said, his voice strong and clear. To art, to change, and to the stories yet to be told. The crowd echoed his words, their voices a symphony of hope and determination. And as Marcus looked around, he saw not just a gallery but a legacy, a testament to the power of believing in oneself and uplifting others. A legacy of change.